And we're speaking with Dr. Melissa Luke, author of the book, Life in the World of Yomo. And I've had the opportunity to meet Yo, and he's a pretty cool guy. This is a wonderful concept, Dr. Luke, and I'm enjoying. I haven't finished the book, but I've leafed through it and circled a bunch of things that I'm crazy about. And I wanted to talk with you about the power of positive thinking. Somebody's stuck in a job somewhere, or they're getting ready to graduate from school, and they are kind of confused. How do you get yourself oriented to start thinking positively?
That's an excellent question, Paul. In fact, I'm going to backtrack a couple of seconds just to give you an example. When I first wrote this book, it was for 18 to 24, 25-year-olds, and I beta tested on my management audiences. So the audiences that I was speaking in front of were on average 35 to 45 years old. Mm-hmm. And their positive thinking skills have dropped significantly, especially since, from the age of 5, it just kind of decreases down. So I really beta tested on them, and I asked them on a scale of 100%, 0 being you hate your job so much you have to give yourself self-affirmations in the shower to go to work, and a 50% would be I'm just too lazy to stick stuff on Monster.com and I need a paycheck, or 100% would be I can't wait to go to work the next day. Well, out of the last 1,500 people I pulled, they were running at a 67%, which is fairly low. I mean, if you're operating that low, it's a problem. And so when I got that statistic, that's where I decided we have to help these people think differently. And the power of positive thinking is necessary to pull that number up. I mean, you can't operate at a 67% and be good at what you do. And so the power of thinking, most people don't think it can happen, but it is. I mean, we've seen millions of neurological studies of powerful thinking that change everything about a person's life. So I had to make it simple so people could understand that they really can do it. In fact, there was one really awesome study that was conducted where basically, this is just on thought, but in fact, you can Google this. It's the finger muscle experiment. Basically, they just had a bunch of college students pull a rubber band. They measured the strength in their muscle, and they had them pull a rubber band for 20 or 30 minutes a day for a couple of weeks. And they found that there was a 28 to 31% increase in the muscle strength, which is normal. I mean, if you go to the gym and do that, same thing's going to happen with any muscle. But then they had a bunch of people, a different group, come in. They could not move their fingers, and they had to sit there and think about pulling this rubber band with their finger, but they couldn't move their finger. They had to sit on a chair in the dark with their eyes closed and think about pulling it for the same duration of time. You're not going to believe this, but literally the muscle strength grew by 22% just by thinking it. So we can change anything that we want to with the power of thought. We just need to be reassured that we can do it.
Well, somebody a lot smarter than me is quoted as saying, anything the mind of man can perceive and believe, it can achieve.
Absolutely.
And that's a pretty broad statement if you think about it. Anything covers everything. Now I'm not talking about somebody that's not quite right mentally, and he decides that he's going to get on that ladder and climb up to the moon in the next 5 minutes. I'm not talking about that. But reasonable things that are within the grasp of people, but they don't realize it. If you can conceive of this, you can achieve it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to sit on a rocking chair, sipping a nice cool drink on a hot summer day and watching this all happen, but you can make it happen.
Oh, absolutely. I think people are just told that they can't do it, or mediocrity is becoming the norm. I mean, 80% of the people in the United States don't currently like what they do, and I don't think it's necessarily that they just decided that they would go into a career that they don't like. I think a lot of it is the mental state that they're in and the people that they're around. And obviously we can't change the people around us. So you got to change your thought process and you really can change your thought process in the course of 24 hours. I mean, some things take much longer than that, but it really is how you look at life. And William James was a famous philosopher, and he said one of the most incredible things that we learned in the 19th century was simply by changing our mind, we can change our life. And it's true, but most people just don't understand that it is so easy to do. You just need a couple of steps to get there.
Well, your soul is in control of your mind. Your soul, that one little cell where you live, this is Paul theory. Maybe it works for me. Let's put it that way.
Paul theory. I love Paul theory.
I don't know. Your soul is in control of your mind. and then your mind is in control of your actions. So if you just put your mind on hold for a second and let your soul take over, and you quoted William James, there are many, many, many people, philosophers all over the world that have touched on this repeatedly over hundreds and hundreds of years. And there are always groups of people that figure this out, or they read these kinds of thoughts, and they step forward and they go on and create great things when maybe they started with nothing.
Absolutely. In fact, Paul, you're just as a great a thinker as the wonderful C.S. Lewis, because he said, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body.
You have a body. And you know what? I read that in your book, and it was like, I don't know if you can hear this or not, but the bell rang. I said, oh, my God, that's wonderful, because I'd never seen that before. And you yeah, exactly. You are a soul. You have a body. So positive thinking can make a big difference. Your attitude determines your altitude.
It does. And in fact, if people could, I just wish that I could send people pictures of the inside of their brains to see how it works, because it's an amazing mess to see. But it almost, if you could imagine a bunch of Christmas tree lights, you know how you roll them up and throw them in the attic and you bring them back down the next year and you're like, oh, why didn't I wrap those properly? So you just got this mess and you don't know what to do. You throw them away, or you
That's the definite, you just defined regret.
But that ball of Christmas tree lights, would be considered something called a neurological network in your head, and you have billions of balls of Christmas tree lights in there. And basically, the more you think about something, the Christmas tree ball will get bigger, which in the case of pulling it out of the attic, you don't want it to get bigger, but in your brain you do. It's almost like working on a muscle. So if I was to sit and focus for 40 or 45 days on something and tell myself that I was something that I wasn't, I'm literally going to grow a muscle in that neurological network. I'm going to grow a muscle in my head that didn't exist before. And we can take pictures before and after and see what happens to people. And there's times where, I've tested myself, because I can't wander around and tell people how to do this if it doesn't work on me. And
Sure.
I've tested myself to the point where I almost believe that I've done things that I have not done before. But it's just a thought, and it's a really easy, fun thing to do. But if people could see what goes on in their heads and how their brain will build just by simply thinking of something. And then if you think of something, a bad thing less, then that muscle shrinks in your head, which is ironic. I mean, how many times have you been in the car or at home talking to yourself, having an argument with someone that's not even there, like a ex-friend or an ex-boyfriend or husband or wife, or you're having an argument and those people aren't even there. You're just building a bigger muscle in your head with that.
I talk to myself all the time. The problem is I don't like any of the answers. It's kind of like cuckoo. But we're talking about the power of positive thinking. And also in your book,